On the day I was born, my father had an accident at the construction site and broke his leg. A respected elder in the village said I was a jinx, destined to bring misfortune to the family. An aunt in the same delivery room, who lost her own daughter during a difficult childbirth, adopted me just before my mother could strangle me. When I was born, the country was still advocating the one-child policy. My parents saw it was a girl and discussed how to quietly smother me to death. A worthless girl child. She can't be allowed to sever the lineage of our Lincoln family. My father looked at me as if I were his mortal enemy. My mother refused to let me breastfeed, fearing it would delay her next pregnancy. She even discussed with my grandmother where to bury me so no one would easily discover it. That afternoon, my father had an accident at the construction site and broke his leg. The family had to come up with a large sum of medical expenses, or he would be disabled for life. Upon hearing the news, my mother pinched me all over until I was covered in bruises. I was still in swaddling clothes, and mercilessly slapped me twice across the face. My skull, not yet fully hardened, was immediately dented by her blows. For a long time afterward, my head remained misshapen. The doctor said it might never fully recover. You jinx, you brought disaster to the family the moment you were born, worthless girl. Just a piece of trash. I understood nothing. Only wailing loudly in confusion, but the more I cried, the harder my mother hit me, cursing non-stop for this money-losing burden. To shut up. Beside us, Grandma had already fetched a burlap sack, ready to stuff me in and toss me into the mountains behind the village. The neighbor aunt had a difficult labor, and the baby died. Moreover, she might never be able to conceive again. Witnessing this scene, she couldn't bear it and, despite her frail condition, snatched me from my mother's arms, saying she would raise me, such a precious baby. How could you be so cruel? Her body was weak, but her arms holding me were incredibly strong. Just born, through the thin fabric, I felt the warmth of being held in someone's arms for the first time and, surprisingly, stopped crying. This is my child, carried for 10 months and birthed. If you want to raise her, you have to pay nutrition fees, hospitalization fees, medical expenses. You cover it all, $3,000. And this dead girl is yours. In those days, even $10,000 households were rare, so $3,000 was considered an astronomical sum. The average worker's monthly wage was only a few dozen dollars. $3,000. Fine, I'll pay. From the moment Auntie picked me up, it seemed she couldn't bear to let go, gritting her teeth as she agreed to the deal. Later, my birth mother asked a respected elder in the village to divine my fortune. And they said I was a jinx. Whoever got close to me would suffer misfortune. She was even more delighted that she had decisively gotten rid of me and used the $3,000 to treat my father's leg. The remaining money also helped my birth mother start a small business. Not 2 months after selling me off, she was pregnant again. The following year, she gave birth to a chubby baby boy, bringing joy to the whole family. Even my biological father's business started thriving. Later, they moved straight to the town, becoming the wealthy family that everyone in the village envied. My younger brother was doted on by my biological parents and grandparents alike, hailed as a blessed star who came to repay their kindness. Every time they talk about my younger brother Lucky Star, they always add a mention of me, the jinx. Gradually, everyone in the village and beyond, even in neighboring villages, came to know me as the jinx, right from birth. I was said to have brought misfortune to my own father, causing him to break his leg, and the aunt who insisted on adopting me ended up divorced from her husband, while being scorned and gossiped about by the villagers, saying, not right in the head, throwing away a good life, and eagerly inviting disaster home. Those $3,000 were all the dowry she brought to her marriage and all the savings she had accumulated over the past 2 years. After giving away that $3,000, the aunt left her husband with nothing, divorced and penniless. Even her own family couldn't understand her and cut off all contact. She took me alone and returned to a long-abandoned small courtyard in the countryside. This became even more fodder for village gossip. They said I was a little jinx, that after my adoptive mother took me in, I brought her divorce and estrangement, even causing a rift between her and her parents, from childhood. I grew up in such an environment. The village children would throw stones at me when they saw me. Even the village idiot could spit at me and curse me as a jinx. Yet my adoptive mother treated me as her own, cherishing me like a pearl in the palm of her hand. In the end, my head didn't become flat. When I grew up and tied my hair in braids, it was round and perfectly shaped. Even the doctors said it was a miracle. What miracle? during the cold winter months. My mother spent night after night cradling my small head in her hands, gradually correcting the shape of my still developing skull. No one took care of my mother during her postpartum confinement, and she didn't have much breast milk either. She learned massage techniques from a village aunt who had given birth to 2 children, and through sheer determination, managed to stimulate her milk flow. When I took my first sip of breast milk, my mother was so happy she nearly cried. She's drinking. She's drinking, now she can survive. Later, she supported us by doing needlework while nursing me during her postpartum confinement. Her eyesight wasn't very good, likely because she didn't properly rest during her confinement. Villagers began spreading rumors again, saying I was the one who caused my foster mother's impending blindness. But this time she heard it, and with hands on hips, she directly cursed them back. Am I raising my child with your family's rice? Gradually, the gossip in the village died down, but fewer people remained close to us, mother and child. From a young age, I seemed determined to defy fate. With insufficient breast milk and no money at home, my mother could only make do by feeding me cornmeal paste. Yet by the age of 2, I hadn't fallen ill even once. Chubby and robust, I looked stronger and taller than other kids my age. As soon as I turned 2, my mother weaned me. She then used some saved money to buy a small cart for making candied hawthorns and started selling them by roaming the streets and alleys. Our life gradually improved. Under the small cart, there was a quilt, a pillow, and a little cloth doll picked from the garbage dump. That small cart, along with the sugar-scented pot bottom, was my entire childhood. My mother often held me and said, "I've never regretted having you, you're the brightest star in my life." Because there were many gossips in the village, I knew from a young age that I was adopted. I even felt that I had ruined my mother's originally bright future, so I made up my mind from childhood. I must take good care of my mother when I grow up. When I was 4 years old, something big happened in our town. My mother's ex-husband, the man who was originally supposed to be my stepfather, killed someone. He killed the woman he later married. According to my mother, not long after the man divorced her, he married another woman. At first, the two of them got along quite well, until the new wife gave birth to a baby girl. The man and his parents began to beat and curse the woman, and even sold her child to human traffickers. Then, the wife went insane, with no support from her own family. She was beaten lightly every 2 days and severely every 3 days, and was even tied up in the pigsty to eat pig feed. Later, the man got drunk and lost control of his strength, beating her to death. When the police came to arrest people, my mother held my hand and watched from the crowd in town. I felt her grip tighten, her palm sweaty, slippery and warm. Later, she hurriedly took me home and hugged me tightly the moment we stepped inside. "My dear, you're not a jinx at all, you're my lucky star." It turned out that my mother had a difficult labor at the time, and the baby was also a girl, but she died right after birth. At that moment, she felt that her husband and in-laws, who had previously treated her quite well, looked at her differently, even saying things like she had given birth to a dead girl and brought bad luck. This was why my mother, a woman who had just given birth, could walk over from the next room without anyone caring. That family stopped treating her as a human being the moment they saw she had given birth to a girl who didn't even take her first breath. Later, they adopted me, but had a falling out with that family, and the village gossip was also spread by them. Over the years, my mom has heard some rumors but didn't want to get involved in her ex-husband's family affairs. Now it seems she dodged a bullet. Sweetheart, if it weren't for you, the one who might have died could have been me, your mom. Nicole is the name my mother gave me, and my full name is Nicole James. In our local dialect, these two characters mean treasure. Since I was little, my mother has always said that I am her greatest treasure. When I was 6 years old, my mother took me to the city for the first time, saying it was for my uncle's wedding. Ever since adopting me, my mom hasn't had any contact with her family. This time, my uncle sent her an invitation to his wedding, which made her so happy she couldn't sleep all night. She kept praising my uncle to me, saying he was a successful man who got into university, found a job in the city, and married a beautiful aunt. "Sweetie, do you think this looks good on me?" She specifically bought new clothes for this occasion and stood in front of the mirror, looking at herself from side to side for a long time. I had never seen my mother wear a dress before. Seeing her now, radiant in a pale pink dress as she stood before the mirror, it suddenly struck me. She was only in her 20s. That day, after we finished packing, We ate at a small noodle shop in the village before heading to the city for the wedding. I never expected that as soon as I stepped inside, someone spat right onto the toe of my shoe. My mother immediately furrowed her brows and saw that it was Aunt Lisa, the village gossip. Aunt Lisa is also a relative from my biological father's side. Deeply superstitious and old-fashioned, she never missed an opportunity to badmouth me in the village. I wouldn't dare eat with your daughter, Aunt Lisa said, though she made no move to get up from her seat. My mom immediately cursed back at them, and it wasn't until the noodles were served that the two were finally pulled apart. But for some reason, today the smell of scallions in the noodles kept making me nauseous. I didn't want to cause trouble for my mom, so I kept holding it in. Then a gust of wind blew, carrying the scent straight into my nostrils, and I couldn't hold back anymore. I covered my mouth tightly, but still couldn't stop myself from throwing up. Ugh, the people in the room started cursing at me again, saying I was disgusting. Big sister Lisa also fanned the flames beside me. Ugh, we're all eating here. How revolting. Truly a worthless piece of trash. There were about 7 or 8 people sitting in the room, and none of them cared about my physical condition, all chiming in with their disdainful accusations. My mom wanted to go up and fight with Sister Lisa, but I held her back. With tears in my eyes, I looked at her. Mom, I still feel like throwing up. Let's just go. And just like that, we left without even finishing our meal. The shop owner, being familiar with Sisterly, charged my mom a cleaning fee. Using the excuse that I had dirted the store by vomiting, I clenched my fists tightly, feeling like I might truly be a burden, a jinx. Mom suddenly crouched down and gently stroked my face with her hand. Sweetie, it's okay, let's go home and have dinner first. Come on, Mommy will carry you on her back. But just as we walked out of the shop, not even 2 minutes later, a deafening boom of an explosion suddenly erupted behind us. Mom and I turned around in shock, only to see the shop that had been perfectly fine moments ago now engulfed in flames. The gas tank exploded. Go save people quickly. Immediately, someone shouted loudly on the street, but as soon as his words fell, there was another boom, and the house collapsed directly. Amid the flames, I seemed to see a woman in a floral-patterned jacket desperately reaching out her hands, crying for help. At that moment, she saw me, her eyes filled with disbelief, but soon, she was engulfed by the flames again. It was none other than Sister Lisa. Rescue was already too late. The house was burned down to an empty frame in just a few minutes. We all knew, those inside were probably done for. Our village has poor transportation, and that small restaurant usually keeps 5 or 6 spare gas canisters. When we stepped out earlier, both my mom and I noticed the restaurant door was somewhat broken, hard to push open, effectively cutting off the escape route for those inside. My mom suddenly hugged me, her gaze almost dazed. Sweetheart, you're truly something. If it weren't for me feeling unwell and insisting on coming out earlier, it would have been our mother and daughter perishing in the sea of flames now. The entire village joined in fighting the fire, with wails and cries filling the air incessantly. In the midst of it, both Mom and I helped by fetching water from afar and attempting to douse the flames a few times, leaving us in a disheveled state. Our dresses soiled and hair tousled, yet neither of us complained. After all, we had narrowly escaped death and preserved our lives, but the people in the shop could never come out, not even their bodies could be found, as they had turned to charcoal. In our rural area, this is considered the most tragic way to die, unable to bury the body in the grave, leaving only a cenotaph with personal belongings. In those days, there were no transportation links between the village and the city, because of this accident. The family originally planning to go to the city changed their plans. My mother and I waited for 2 hours before an ox cart finally agreed to take us out of the village. Throughout the journey, neither of us spoke a word. All I could feel was my mother gripping my hand tightly, her palms sweaty and trembling slightly the whole time. After arriving in the city, my mother first found a place to tidy up our clothes before we entered the hotel. But the banquet had already ended, and most people had left. In the end, we were too late. Besides, even though we had both tidied up, it was still obvious that our clothes were disheveled and our faces covered in dust. As soon as we stood in the opulent hotel lobby, a waiter walked over and waved at us. Beggars, get out. There's no leftover food here. Today was Uncle's big day, and we were late again. Mom didn't want to cause trouble, so she forced a smile and asked, "Where's the family hosting the wedding banquet?" "I'm his sister, his own sister." Unexpectedly, the waiter looked us up and down, then sneered, That's the son-in-law of Principal Leo from the local middle school. Someone like you claiming to be his sister. Get out of here. Stop talking nonsense. Our clothing had clearly led the waiter to misunderstand, but my mother didn't want to miss the chance to see her brother and the others. So she patiently explained while craning her neck to look around, hoping to spot her family. To her surprise, the waiter outright shoved her, trying to get favors from Principal Leo. Don't bother looking here. The wedding banquet just announced. The groom is an only child. He doesn't have any older sister. Hearing the waiter's words, my mother froze. But soon, as if she understood something, she took my hand and walked out of the hotel. On the way, my mother cried. It was only then that I learned my mother had never been favored by her parents since childhood. Her full name was Sophia James. All because my grandparents had wanted a boy after she was born. My mother stroked my head and said, "Sweetheart, being born a woman is hard, but mommy will never let you repeat my mistakes." But mom still wanted to catch one last glimpse of her parents and family. I could see the sadness in mom's heart, so I pointed to a low building nearby. "Mom, we can go up there. You'll be able to see the hotel entrance from there." That way, when grandma and grandpa walked out of the hotel, she could see them from afar. What a clever girl. We climbed the stairs of the low-rise building, ready to take a look at grandma's family from here. But as soon as we reached the top, we saw a chubby older sister standing on the rooftop. Her feet were on the edge of the building, as if she wanted to jump down. "Mom, what is that person doing?" I pointed to the rooftop and said. My mom was startled too and immediately put me down. She rushed up in a few quick steps, trembling as she spoke. "Little girl, whatever's troubling you, come down first. It's windy here. It's dangerous." The young lady looked about 5 or 6 years older than me, wearing a cute puffy dress, her face streaked with tears. When she saw my mom approaching, instead of coming down, she took another step back. It looked like she was just 10 centimeters away from stepping off the edge. My mom didn't dare to move, so she gently asked the other person what was wrong. After asking, she found out that it was because the girl was overweight and had worn her favorite dress today, which led to her being secretly mocked by other classmates. They all say I'm fat, that I don't deserve to wear a dress, that I'm ugly, that I look like a pig in a tutu, but I really love dresses. The young girl was crying uncontrollably, barely steady on the rooftop, looking as if she might fall at any moment. I looked at the older girl and suddenly felt confused. I've always been chubby, and my mom loves dressing me in skirts. Why do people say I'm cute but call this older girl ugly? Big sister is so pretty. You look even better in skirts than I do. I'm chubby too, but I don't look as pretty in skirts as you. Don't listen to them, big sister. I don't know where the courage came from, but I walked over, directly grabbed the young lady's hand, and mustered the courage to speak. These were my sincere words. So when I said them, my eyes were clear and earnest. Perhaps because I was just a child, the young lady had no guard up against me. "Come down quickly, big sister. Mom said it's dangerous to stand too high." As I spoke, I gently pulled the young lady back from the edge of the building. The moment I tugged her back, the stone slab beneath her feet suddenly loosened. A large chunk of the rock tumbled straight down, sending chills down our spines. If I hadn't moved just now, would I have fallen?" the young lady said in a panic. Later, my mom comforted the young lady on the rooftop for a long time, even pointing to my double chin as an example. "It's good for kids to be a little chubby. It's called healthy beauty. If anyone insults you, insult them back. Don't take it to heart. If you jumped from here, how devastated would your parents be? If you had stood there any longer and the ledge collapsed, it would have been too late." The young lady seemed to realize her mistake at the mention of her parents. Her eyes flickered slightly, and she nodded gently. She hugged me tightly. "Thanks to this little girl. I was so scared just now." At that very moment, anxious shouts came from below. "Bella, Bella." The young lady ran off, but before leaving, she thanked both me and my mom. Just then, I happened to see a group of people coming out of the hotel, so I asked my mom if they were my grandparents and the others. My mom immediately stood up, her eyes lighting up with excitement. In the end, Mom still couldn't muster the courage to go up and say a word to Grandma and Grandpa. After watching for a while, she prepared to leave, but just as she had gone downstairs and was about to cross the street to catch the bus, someone grabbed her. "Principal Leo, someone was just impersonating your son-in-law's sister. Should we send them to the police station?" the waiter shouted loudly, drawing everyone's attention. After shouting, he looked rather obsequiously at the crowd. "Principal Leo, Don't you think I've contributed to society? About my niece's withdrawal from school. Among the crowd, an elderly couple dressed in suits glanced over and immediately spotted my mother. The gray-haired old woman furrowed her brows directly. Sophia, dressed like that and bringing that burden along. Are you trying to embarrass our James family? I told your brother long ago that you have nothing to do with our James family anymore. He didn't need to invite you to his wedding, so how did you find your way here? What, life hasn't treated you well, and now you regret it, coming back to beg for our forgiveness. The old lady's 3 rapid-fire questions cut like a knife, and my mother's face instantly turned pale. Only then did we realize that for my uncle's wedding, the old couple had never intended to invite my mother in the first place. It was my aunt who insisted on sending the invitation. Let's go, we're leaving now. My mother tightly gripped my hand, tears welling in her eyes, and with those words, she turned and walked away. I also lowered my head, not daring to say a word. I was 4 years old and already understood some things. I knew that the strained relationship between my mom and the family was all because of me, back then. She had divorced in order to adopt me, which severed her ties with the family, but at that moment, a small figure suddenly rushed out from the side and grabbed my sleeve. Mom and Dad, they were the ones who saved me just now. At this moment, my grandparents, who had been stern-faced, suddenly changed their expressions. Oh my, isn't this Bella from Boss Carter's family? Where have you been playing just now? The little girl my mom and I had just saved turned out to be the child of a very influential boss in the city, so influential that even my aunt's family, who already held considerable status in the city, had to look up to them. They even provided funding for Principal Leo's school. Mrs. Carter, upon learning that my mom and I had saved her daughter, tightly grasped my mother's hand. Bella told me everything. We owe it all to you. When Mrs. Carter placed a large, bright red brick of cash as a token of gratitude in front of my mom, both of us were stunned. Mrs. Carter, it's really not necessary, my mom said. Her face flushed as she tried to refuse, but Mrs. Carter insisted on pushing the money into my mom's hands. If it weren't for you, our Bella would be. This scene left my grandparents utterly speechless. Even my aunt's family, who arrived later, kept saying that my mother and I were kind-hearted and naturally blessed, urging us to accept the gratitude money. By the time my mother and I returned to the village, we both felt as if we were floating. How could a trip to the city end with us getting $10,000? That was $10,000. In those days, $10,000 could do a lot. Some people worked hard all year round, with their entire family toiling, and still only managed to earn $1,000 or so. Sweetheart, from now on, we're going to have a good life, my mother said cheerfully in my ear. Already planning how to use the money to start a small business, listening to her, I felt so excited, as if we were truly about to have a better life. Mom wouldn't have to push her cart around selling candied hawthorns anymore, but who would have thought that the very next day, 8,000 of that money would be stolen. The ones who robbed me of my money were none other than my own parents. Turns out, not long after they moved to the city, my father's business started to decline. And he was even cheated out of a sum of money. Life was already tight, and then my spoiled younger brother hit someone in kindergarten. Rumor has it he even poked out the other child's eye. The victim's family demanded a huge compensation fee, threatening to send my parents to jail if they didn't pay. The place wasn't big to begin with, and what happened at the hotel entrance yesterday quickly reached the ears of these two. They stormed into the village the very next day, kicking our door down first thing in the morning, pointing at my mom's nose. They cursed, "You shameless woman, it was our daughter who saved Director Chen's child, so that money should rightfully go to us, her real parents. If you don't hand over the money today, we'll smash your house and take that little bastard away to sell her." They were bullying us, a widow and her child, with no one to stand up for us at home. Staring at this pair of biological parents I had no memory of, I hid behind my mom, tears welling up in my eyes. There are things I was too young to understand, yet I always felt that I didn't want such biological parents. My mother protected me fiercely, but they kept shouting about taking DNA tests and going to court to settle the matter. That's when I learned that my mother had paid money back then and had also registered my household registration. But because they didn't understand the law, they never went through the formal adoption process. In the end, to spend money to avoid disaster and prevent me from being hurt again, my mom took out $8,000 from it and threw it in the faces of my biological parents. Take the money, complete all the legal procedures, and never come back to harass our daughter again. Just like that, The greedy couple left with the $8,000, and at the law firm, they signed an agreement with my mom to complete the legal procedures. In those days, the adoption process was quite simple. So after the initial $3,000 at birth, I ended up costing my mom another $8,000. At the age of 4, I was already thinking, how was I going to earn this money when I grew up, to pay my mom back? But before I could figure it out, my mom suddenly hugged me tightly the next day. "Sweetheart, do you know something terrible has happened?" Although she said, "Something happened," my mother's expression carried a hint of vindication. My biological father was in a car accident. This time, it was the same leg that had been injured many years ago, and it was a comminuted fracture. At the time, he was holding that $8,000, about to settle the trouble caused by his youngest son. I never expected to get hit by someone on the way, and the doctor said that to cure it, it would cost exactly $8,000. After some deliberation, my own parents ended up giving the money to the family whose child's eye my younger brother had gouged out, just to protect him. As for my own father, he suffered miserably. I heard he had been lying in bed for several months, developing bed sores on his buttocks. When he could finally get out of bed, his legs were crippled, and he walked with a limp, leaning to one side. Before even turning 30, he looked like an old man in his 60s or 70s. Once a person can no longer provide value to others, conflicts inevitably arise, and harmony becomes a thing of the past. During those days, my biological mother often quarreled with my biological father. Once during an argument, my drunk biological father slapped me so hard that my head swelled up like a tumor, and the swelling never went down. As for my mom, she used those $2,000 to start a roasted nuts business. She was skilled and hardworking, and before long, she had her own small shop. By the time I reached high school, my mom had already opened 2 chain stores in the city. City folks would give a thumbs up at the mention of James's family roasted nuts and seeds, especially those candied hawthorns. Just eating them fills you with happiness. Later, when my mom became well off, she could finally hold her head high and reconnect with my grandma's family. The two families started visiting each other more often, even celebrating the new year together. I always thought it was because my mom had become a strong, successful woman that my grandparents began to look at her with newfound respect. But then one day, my mom told me, "The only reason your grandma's family is willing to keep in touch with me is because of your connection to the Chen family. Your mom knows this all too well. They raised me, after all, and being able to send them gifts every year and have a chat is enough to put my heart at ease." In this world, our little girl will always be the dearest. Bella and I later became best friends. Although there was a 10-year age difference between us, Bella loved playing with me. She especially enjoyed buying me little dresses to wear and loved pinching my chubby little cheeks. "Your chubby little face. Just looking at it brings good fortune." This is something Bella often likes to say, but every time she says it, I think about the $11,000 I cost my mom the moment I was born. That's why, all the way through high school, I studied really hard. It's like there's always a string pulling tight inside me, reminding myself, I must study hard, make a lot of money in the future, earn back the $11,000 I lost from my mom, and take good care of her. In my second year of high school, I turned 18. At 18, I was tall and good-looking. Despite my biological parents not being particularly tall, I grew to a height of 1.72 meters. I didn't break out much during puberty, and after losing my baby fat, my features became even more refined. Bella was almost graduating from college and still loved pinching my cheeks, but later, when she did it, she'd say, "Nicole James, how did your face turn out like this? How is it so pretty?" Bella has a constitution where she gains weight just by drinking water, so she remained chubby even in college. But now, unlike when she was a child, she no longer feels insecure about her figure. When I was in 6th grade, my mom and I moved to the city. Bella and I often played together and did homework together. As Mrs. Carter put it, ever since my daughter started playing with Nicole, she's become more serious about her studies and is shaping up nicely. Perhaps it's because I've held the beautiful belief since childhood that I must earn $11,000 to repay my mom, as if something were constantly pushing me from behind, making me never dare to slack off. Even Bella got nervous because of it. When I was in my senior year of high school, Bella was already doing her university internship. With outstanding grades, she landed a job at a listed company in City H, making all her classmates envious. At the same time, she already had guys pursuing her. When she asked the boy what he liked about her, He actually said, "Bella, the way you work hard and stay confident is especially beautiful." That weekend, Bella rushed to my school and called me out. When she saw me, she immediately pulled me into a hug. "Sweetie, thank you. If it weren't for you and Aunt holding me back then, and if it weren't for you studying with me all these years, even if I hadn't died, I'd still be an insecure little chubby girl." That same year, Bella insisted on signing me up for some teen model competition, no matter what. At first, I didn't agree to participate, but then I saw that the grand prize was $11,000. My eyes instantly lit up. Senior year of high school was very busy, so I secretly practiced my model walk at home for over a week and entered the competition with the beautiful belief that I must earn this $11,000. The day after my college entrance exams ended, when I felt my performance was relatively stable, my mom received a call from the competition organizers. "What? My daughter participated in a youth modeling competition and won first place, with a prize of $11,000. My mom laughed. "This must be a scam." During the summer vacation after my senior year of high school, while my classmates were traveling, playing games, or dating, I was dragging my mom to the hospital. My mom absolutely refused to take the $11,000. She said since I earned it myself, I should keep it, but I've noticed that my mother's eyesight has been getting worse these past few years. It's an old condition from doing needlework during her postpartum confinement. Compounded by her advancing age, her eyes have become sensitive to light, and she struggles to see clearly at night. She's always been the carefree type and never made a big deal of it, but I've decided to use this $10,000 to treat her eyes. We already have 2 shops at home and a house in the city, but my mom still lives very frugally. At night, she often sits on the bed counting the day's earnings, grinning from ear to ear. This is all for my little girl's dowry. As a result, all these years, my mom has gone for eye checkups a few times but never persisted with the treatment. This time, now that my college entrance exams are over, I'm determined to get my mom's eyes properly treated. I forcefully made a doctor's appointment for my mom and insisted on taking her to the hospital several times. Later, after she repeatedly promised to obediently accept treatment, I finally felt somewhat relieved. But then I discovered my mom was actually going to the hospital every day on her own initiative. She even asked me to look after her shop, which she usually treats as a treasure, until one day, I saw Dr. Harry, who had examined her eyes, actually escorting her home. Only then did I realize my mom was in love. Back then, people married early. My mom was only 19 when she married her ex-husband, and by 20, she had divorced due to a difficult childbirth. By the time I turned 18, she was just 38. It's just that these years have been very hard on her, so she looks a bit older than she is. But this summer vacation, she's been beaming with joy every day. She even put on a long skirt she hadn't worn for years, and when she twirled in the living room, the skirt bloomed like a rose-red morning glory. "Sweetie, doesn't mommy look pretty?" I walked over and hugged her. Mom is the prettiest. That year, I barely made the cutoff to get into a university, majoring in teacher education. I've always remembered what my mom told me when I was little. "Sweetheart, being born a woman is hard, but mom will never let you repeat my mistakes." Back then, I thought to myself, when I grow up, I want to volunteer as a teacher in impoverished areas. In places where boys are favored over girls, lead by example, bring the girls out from there. Every girl deserves a life as brilliant as flowers in bloom, not to be branded as guilty at birth simply for being female, nor to be mercilessly snuffed out in the cradle while still a tender bud. That same year, my mom and Dr. Harry got married. Dr. Harry became my stepfather. There was one more person to spoil me. At the beginning of the following spring, my mom unexpectedly got pregnant. A 39-year-old high-risk pregnant woman. I'm even more nervous than my mom. Whenever there's a holiday, I rush home immediately, afraid that my mom might get confused and something might happen. Dr. Harry treats my mom very well, practically spoiling her to the heavens. Perhaps because of past experiences, my mom is a bit fearful. Several times, right in front of me, she earnestly told my stepfather, "At my age, I'm risking my life to have this baby. I only have 2 demands. First, whether it's a boy or a girl, you must treat them equally. Second, even after we have this child, you can't treat our little girl badly." Dr. Harry is 3 years older than my mom, a gentle and refined man whose smile gives off an honest and kind vibe. He lost his wife early in life and never remarried, nor did he have any children. In his 40s, he finally had a child late in life. He would respond to almost everything my mom said with, yes, yes, yes. And the way he looked at her was so sweet it could practically drip honey. In contrast, I also heard some things about my so-called real dad and real mom. Their family was quite well known in the city. The reason for their fame was that they raised an exceptionally troublesome child. From a young age, he was constantly causing trouble, and as soon as he turned 18, he ended up in prison. We didn't inquire too much about the specifics. Only that my biological parents were so worried their hair turned white overnight, and their business took a nosedive. My mom frowned when she heard this. Sweetie, you said their family was always so unreasonable before. What if they come after you again if things don't go well for them? I gently touched my mom's slightly rounded belly. Don't worry too much. Just focus on taking care of yourself and the baby. I'm not the little pushover I used to be. I've grown up now. And I'm not afraid of them. Besides, we still have Dad. Hearing this, my mom's face flushed slightly. You're right, sweetie. Like my mom, I don't have much fondness for my biological parents, and I'm always worried they might stir up trouble, especially during Mom's critical period. I'm afraid they might cause trouble at this time and hurt my mom. On the first day of the Lunar New Year, families are joyful and reunited. Yet my mom and I are in the hospital again. Because my mom is about to give birth, my stepfather was so nervous that sweat beaded on his forehead, muttering some medical facts under his breath. He kept anxiously pulling at the hospital nurses, asking them this and that. The nurse couldn't help but laugh. Dr. Harry, you're a doctor yourself. You know childbirth takes time. The mother is stable. Don't worry so much. Just as they were talking, my mom gave birth. The loud and clear cry of a baby echoed through the room. Soon, a doctor pushed the door open and announced, the mother has given birth. 8 pounds and 2 ounces. A big, healthy boy. The little brother was very well behaved, as if he knew his mother had exhausted all her strength to bring him into the world at such an advanced age, so he vowed to repay her by never crying or fussing. Tiny as he was, he loved to smile from an early age, slept peacefully through the night, and during the day, aside from eating and sleeping, he hardly gave anyone any trouble, and so, my mother went from being a widow with a burden to becoming the enviable woman next door, with a harmonious family, a child born in her later years, and both a son and daughter. My mom often boasted to my stepfather, honey, all of this in our family is thanks to Nicole. Nicole is our little lucky star. Ever since I met her, she must have said this countless times. My stepfather would always listen gently, never complaining about her nagging. Eventually, even when looking at their own son, he felt it was all because of the luck I brought. Once he said, your mom was right. Nicole is truly a lucky star. If it weren't for that time when Nicole insisted on taking your mom to the hospital to get her eyes checked, I wouldn't have met her either. When he said this, my stepfather's eyes were shining as he looked at me. These two old folks often made me feel so embarrassed that I could only retreat to my room to read. During the winter break of my junior year in college, I took the train home. I was in a hurry to come back, so I could only get a ticket for the evening. By the time I got off the train, it was already 2 a.m., thinking about how my parents are getting older and still have to take care of my little brother who just learned to walk. I decided not to tell them, dragging my simple luggage alone. I wanted to take a taxi home, but as soon as I stepped out of the train station, I saw someone rushing toward me. The man walked with a slight limp, and his clothes were dirty, making him look somewhat intimidating. Frowning, I tried to avoid him, but to my surprise, he dashed over like lightning and grabbed my arm. Sweetheart, I'm your dad. All these years, I hadn't been in touch with my biological parents, but our city is relatively small, and my aunt is quite the gossip, so I'd still heard bits and pieces about them. My younger brother, who was hailed as a lucky star from birth, poked out the eye of a fellow kindergarten student at the age of 3 and only grew more unruly from there. Not only did he perform poorly in school, but he also loved picking fights and flaunting his wealth. By his teens, he was already demanding that the family buy him a car. He claimed that some kid named Ma in his class had a car and looked so cool. Even though the guy was ugly, all the girls still flocked around him. My family refused to buy it for him and even earnestly advised him, saying he wasn't yet an adult and that it was very dangerous, urging him to wait a little longer. Unexpectedly, he defiantly argued with the family, saying, haven't you always said since I was little that I'm a heaven-sent lucky star? How could I be the same as others? Back then, vehicle regulations weren't as strict as they are now. My biological father actually managed to get a car for his precious son, just 2 days later. He hit someone with his car, as fate would have it. The day he hit someone was his 18th birthday, meaning he had to bear criminal responsibility himself. His family couldn't afford to settle the matter privately, so he spent 2 years in prison before being released. After getting out, not only did he idle around, but he also kept pestering his parents to find him a job. But over these years, the old couple's savings had long been drained. Where would they get the money to find him a job? That's when they turned their attention to me and my parents. Sweetheart, look, he's your own brother. You can't be so heartless. The Lincoln family has only this one bloodline left, a man in his 40s, yet he looked like he was in his 50s or 60s. His clothes were filthy, and the trouser leg was worn through from dragging on the ground due to his limp. I gently pulled his hand away from me and shook my head. I'm sorry, my surname is James. When they tried to strangle me, I had just been born and had no memory of it, but the words of those villagers still reached my ears, piercing through my fragile body like countless thorns. My head was nearly crushed. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, my mother would often worryingly tilt my head to check, afraid there might be any lingering health issues. She even took me for several brain CT scans. I know, that was my own mother, who hit me. There are also 2 short scars on the inner side of my thigh, shaped like 2 half-moons, resembling the marks of fingernails. I know, that was my own mother, who pinched me when I was just born. When I was 4 years old, they came to our house, kicked the door open, and forcibly took that $8,000 from my mother's hands. I still remember it clearly. All these years, when I was sick, they never cared. It was my mother who carried me on her back to see the barefoot doctor in the village. They never worried about my schooling. In 2nd grade, I once cried in frustration because I couldn't read a character. My mom had little education and couldn't read, so she flipped through the dictionary word by word, constantly comforting me. Don't cry, sweetheart, mommy's here. What kind of parents are they to me? How dare this man claim that's my own brother? But to my surprise, as soon as I finished speaking, the man suddenly reached out and grabbed my wrist. You damn brat, don't blame me for being harsh. A bus suddenly rushed out from behind, and 3 men dragged me onto the vehicle. It was late at night, and there were hardly any people on the road. Back in those days, surveillance cameras were rare. I wanted to scream for help, but those men forcefully covered my mouth. I kicked with all my strength, only to be slapped hard twice across the face. Turning my head, I saw the man I was supposed to call father, his eyes bloodshot as he glared at me. I gave you a life. Now it's time to pay it back. I just noticed the car had out-of-province license plates. Suddenly, I remembered the recent news reports about human trafficking of women. I heard the 2 men dragging me from behind say, "This girl is really something, old Lou. Our boss might give you a bonus." The man suddenly got excited. Can it be 3,000 more? Suddenly, I felt despair. Just when I thought it was all over, I suddenly heard a powerful voice. Who's there? I recognized the owner of the voice and struggled with all my might, finally breaking free from the hand covering my mouth. I shouted loudly, "Mom, save me. My mom always says I'm her lucky star. Without me, she might have died long ago. But in truth, my mom is my lucky star. When I was born, I was almost strangled to death, but she adopted me. Later, she raised me through hardships and even turned against her own family for my sake. At the age of 20, she had the courage to get divorced in that era. It was her selfless love for me that continuously inspired me to learn and grow. Even though I was born into a single-parent adoptive family, I never felt like an outsider or lacked love. I am confident and beautiful, daring to fight for my dreams. Also has a grateful heart and wants to give back to society. All of this is because I have a great mother. Even though she is not my biological mother, the kindness of raising me is greater than the heavens. Not raising a child after giving birth is the real irresponsibility. Better not to have one at all. Later, my mom told me that she couldn't sleep at all that night at home. Her mind was filled with the recent news reports about women being abducted. I kept thinking, my daughter is so beautiful. She even won first prize in a modeling competition at 18. Wouldn't someone have their eyes on her? Today, while sitting at home watching TV, I started feeling uneasy. I figured you'd be coming home today, so I rushed out to the station to wait for you. If I had to explain it, I'd say it was nothing but a mother's intuition. My mother's love and concern for me gave her an intuition that brought her rushing to my side at my most desperate moment. my stepfather. Worried about my mother's poor eyesight and afraid she might have another accident at night, followed her to the station. At the time, they called me several times but couldn't get through. Feeling even more certain something was wrong, they began searching near the station and called a few more people for help. It just so happened to catch the moment when I was about to be abducted. The next day, we made the news. The headline read, "A mother's love is great. Intuition leads mother to rescue daughter at train station at night, aiding police in busting province's largest human trafficking ring." The news didn't mention the $200,000 reward. My biological father went to prison. Because of this, my biological mother brought my younger brother to our house and caused a scene. But due to the news coverage, our situation had already spread, and the whole neighborhood knew about it. When they saw them coming to make trouble, they immediately drove them out. Aunt Lucy from next door scolded my biological mother for half an hour without repeating herself or using any foul language. She left my mother pale-faced. Later, because my stepfather was transferred to a new job, my mother and I moved to a bigger city, completely cutting off contact with that family. By the time I was 23, I had been admitted to Peking University as a graduate student with outstanding grades, becoming the pride of my parents. My younger brother, however, was having a tough time then. He was already in elementary school and was often compared to me by our parents, which filled him with determination from the first grade onward. Once during a heart-to-heart talk with him, I learned that my little brother has a grand dream, to surpass his sister, to study better than my sister, get into a better school, to be stronger than mom, and gentler than dad. I gently pinched his chubby little cheek. "Then you must work really hard." But for my parents, there was one more thing they were extremely worried about: my relationship status. At 26, when I graduated with a master's degree and was admitted to a PhD program, I still hadn't been in a relationship. I didn't care about it at all myself. I always carried dreams in my heart, wanting to learn more and contribute more to society. I've already contacted a self-built school in a remote rural area and plan to become its principal right after I graduate with my PhD. But my parents are going crazy with worry. They've gathered all our relatives, friends, and even my dad's patients to start arranging blind dates for me. However, I've dodged them all whenever possible, having not the slightest interest in romance. To put it in an online saying, men only slow down my sword-drawing speed. But when Bella got married, I attended her wedding and unexpectedly met a guy there. That guy walked over with a flushed face, wearing a white shirt that carried the lemon scent I love. "Nicole, my name is Charles. I just retired from the military this year, 186 centimeters tall, 70 kilograms, now working in the criminal police squad. Bella is my cousin. I've heard her mention you often." He blurted out so much in one breath, almost revealing his entire family history. Finally, he raised his head. His eyes sparkled as he looked at me, filled with the earnestness and clarity of a young man. "I want to pursue you. They say even the most determined woman can't resist persistent pursuit." I finally understand now. From my first year as a PhD student until my third year, he never gave up. During the years I served as a school principal, he took on a case that no one else wanted to handle and followed me to the countryside. By the time I turned 30, I had sent off the first group of students from my school who were admitted to universities in other cities. Among them were several girls whose families wouldn't allow them to continue their education. I sponsored them myself. As I looked at their excited and hopeful little faces, a weight seemed to lift from my heart. Turning my head, I saw Charles, who had walked this path with me, and smiled softly. "Charles, how about we start dating?" So, at the age of 31, I got married. At 32, thanks to my contributions to the school over the years and the online advocacy by the girls who had graduated from it, the school became famous. After receiving significant attention from society, the school was taken over by the government, underwent renovation, and saw an influx of advanced teaching resources. In the words of the locals, "Our place has come alive." When the school was being reorganized, I didn't stay on, because my parents were aging, and Charles's job required him to be transferred back. Though my heart goes out to the suffering people of the world, I must not fail those by my side. My mother raised me through hardships, and I owe her my gratitude. Charles has stood by me for years, and I must fulfill my duty as his wife. When a university offered me a lecturer position, I returned to City H. At the age of 33, I became pregnant. The test results showed it was twins. When my mother heard it was twins, she frowned. "Twins? That's going to be tough, but my health has always been good, and I've kept up with exercise over the years. The two in my belly seemed well behaved too, so I didn't suffer much during the pregnancy. 10 months later, I gave birth to two chubby baby girls, and the family was overjoyed, little cotton-padded jackets, and double-layered at that. Charles held one in each arm, smiling like the young man I first met, just as we were happily welcoming the new lives. We heard a commotion from the neighboring hospital bed. I've waited on you hand and foot for 10 months, and all you give me is a useless girl. A vicious voice, filled with anger, belonged to a middle-aged woman. Our family doesn't keep freeloaders like this. I say we just throw it away or find someone to give it to. This was the voice of a young man. Turning around, I saw a pale-faced woman lying on the adjacent hospital bed, clearly still recovering from childbirth. Beside her stood a woman in her 50s or 60s, holding a swaddled baby in her arms, yet the way she held the infant was clearly resentful, squeezing so tightly that the child kept crying. The young man was likely the pregnant woman's husband. At that moment, his face was sullen, and the way he looked at his wife resembled the gaze of a resentful woman. My mom let out a loud, "Ow-woo," instantly silencing the argument next door. I saw the pregnant woman, who had been pale-faced and hanging her head, suddenly lift her gaze, her eyes lighting up. "Exactly," my dad chimed in, though clearly unaccustomed to quarreling. He just echoed my mom's words. My husband was even more impressive. He stood up and directly pulled out his police badge from his pocket. "I'm a police officer. Did you just say you were going to kill someone?" The family's faces instantly turned pale, but both my mother and I have been through this before. We knew these few casual words wouldn't change this family's mindset at all. "Look at your family, you've had two dead girls, and you still don't know how unlucky that is, treating a worthless girl like some treasure. We just don't want girls. If you're making such a fuss, why don't you take her if you're so capable?" The man angrily muttered a sentence. "Fine, as long as you're willing, let's go through the adoption procedures." I looked at the pregnant woman on the hospital bed. "But we still need to ask the mother's opinion." The pregnant woman was stunned for a long time, then gritted her teeth and shook her head as she looked at her mother-in-law and husband. "Divorce? Once I recover from childbirth, we'll get divorced. I'll raise the child myself." Seeing this, both my mom and I gave the pregnant woman on the bed a thumbs up. Well done. In some aspects of this world, it's always a bit less friendly towards girls. So we women should strive to be self-reliant and independent, staying clear-headed in life, taking responsibility for ourselves and for those we love and who love us. And sometimes, a little kindness can change another person's life, can save someone. Sometimes, fortune and misfortune are intertwined, and no one knows the outcome. Where there's a will, there's a way. Do good deeds without asking about the future. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.